The Varlan listening outpost floated at the edge of known space, surrounded by silent darkness and broken stars. Once it had been a proud part of the Varlan Empire's border network, a shining eye watching for threats. Now, it was just a fading light in an empty void. Inside the station, 4 Varlan engineers worked in dim light. Power levels dropped lower each day. Rations were almost gone. The Empire they served had gone silent months ago. Their messages received no reply. No supply ships came. It was as if the Empire had forgotten them. Technician Drav, thin and tired, looked out through the main viewport. The stars outside were cold and distant. "Power Cell 5 is gone," he said quietly. His voice echoed through the empty control room. "Then that's it," answered Commander Traylon, the officer in charge. "We have only 2 cells left. Maybe a week of power, if we ration heat." Engineer Valar slammed his hand against a console. "They left us here to die. We are forgotten." Drav did not answer. He only looked at the screen showing their energy levels falling. He knew Valar was right. The Varlan Empire was crumbling, and small outposts like theirs were not worth saving. For months they had sent distress calls into deep space. None were answered. The transmitter was old, its signal weak, but Drav kept sending messages anyway. He couldn't stop. It was something to do, something that made him feel less useless. "Someone will hear," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "Someone always hears." Valar laughed bitterly. "Who? The ghosts of the dead systems? We're finished." But that night something strange happened. The outpost's sensors picked up a signal, small, distant, and moving fast. It was not a Varlan signature. It was completely unknown. Commander Traylon stared at the monitor. "Unidentified vessel approaching. Unknown configuration." "Could it be Krath scouts?" Valar asked. His voice trembled. "If it's the Krath, they'll destroy us." Drav studied the readings. "No, it's not Krath. The engine pattern is unusual, too primitive for them." The ship drew closer. The outpost trembled slightly as its systems detected a docking request. The communication channel opened, and a voice filled the room. "Unidentified outpost. This is human exploration vessel Odyssey. We received your distress signal. Do you require assistance?" The Varlans froze. "Human?" whispered Valar. "Impossible. They're from the backwater systems. They don't even travel this far." But the voice continued, calm and friendly. "We can help stabilize your life support. Please respond." Traylon hesitated. "Humans, they are unpredictable." Drav turned to him. "They answered, Commander. We have no power, no food, no choice. Let them help." For a long moment, Traylon said nothing. Then he nodded. "Open the dock." When the human ship connected to the outpost, the sound of metal on metal echoed through the halls. The airlock opened with a hiss, and 3 humans stepped inside wearing thick suits. The leader was a tall woman with kind eyes visible through her visor. "Commander Avery of the Odyssey," she introduced herself. "We brought supplies and technicians. We'll do what we can." The Varlans watched in silence. Drav studied the humans carefully. Their movements were confident, their equipment simple but efficient. One human knelt by a power conduit, examining it with a small handheld scanner. "This system's ancient," the human said, "but we can patch it." They worked for hours, repairing broken lines and replacing damaged filters. They shared oxygen packs, food rations, and even blankets. Drav noticed how they smiled easily. Even though they were strangers, they acted like old friends. At first, the Varlans kept their distance. Their empire had taught them to distrust outsiders. But as hours passed, fear began to fade. The humans talked while they worked, telling stories of faraway colonies and strange new worlds. "You came all this way?" Drav finally asked. "Just to help?" Commander Avery looked at him. "We saw your distress call. You were in trouble. Isn't that reason enough?" Drav was silent. He had never heard such words before. In his empire, No one helped without reward or command. Yet these humans had come with no demand, only kindness. After the repairs, the humans gathered in the outpost control room. The lights glowed brighter than they had in months. The air felt fresh again. Commander Traylon bowed slightly. "You have saved us. We owe you our lives." Avery smiled. "No debts here. One day, if you see someone else in trouble, help them. That's enough." Her words struck Drav deeply. Simple, but powerful. Help others, even if there's nothing to gain. The humans left behind crates of supplies, food, medical kits, and a compact energy generator. Drav touched one of the crates gently as if it were treasure. It was more than supplies, it was proof that kindness could still exist in the cold galaxy. Before departing, Commander Avery spoke privately with Drav. "Your distress beacon was weak. I almost missed it. You should upgrade your transmitter once you can." Drav nodded. "If we survive long enough, we will." Avery smiled. "You will. And when you do, remember that someone out there answered." When the human ship undocked, the outpost fell silent again, but not in despair. The power hummed steadily. The heat returned. For the first time in months, the Varlans slept without fear. Drav sat by the viewport watching the Odyssey disappear into the stars. He whispered softly, "Thank you, humans." Valor approached quietly. "You trust them too much," he said, though his voice lacked its usual anger. "They could have taken what they wanted, yet they didn't." "Exactly," Drav said. "That's what makes them different." Commander Traylon joined them. "Perhaps they are reckless," he said, "but they have honor." Drav turned to look at his commander. "If I ever see them again, I will repay this. Somehow." Traylon smiled faintly. "Then live long enough to do so." Outside, the stars shone brighter now. The outpost no longer felt like a tomb. It felt like a small island of life, a place touched by something rare and powerful, human compassion. In the quiet, Drav recorded a personal log entry. "Today, humans came. We once believed they were dangerous, unpredictable, even savage. But they brought light into our darkness. They gave without asking, stayed without fear, and left with nothing but a smile. I will not forget them. I promise." He closed the log and stared into the endless dark, feeling a strange warmth inside his chest. The humans had left something more than supplies. They had left hope. And though he didn't know it yet, that single act of kindness would one day echo across the stars. 10 years had passed since the humans saved the dying Varlan outpost. The memory of their visit had faded from most records, buried under wars, politics, and chaos. But not from Drav's mind. He remembered every word, every smile, every act of kindness. Now he stood in the ruins of his homeworld, staring at the broken towers of what had once been the Varlan capital. Smoke drifted across the empty sky. The war with the Krath Dominion had ended months ago, but the damage remained. The Empire had fallen apart. The Varlans were now scattered refugees. Drav had survived by repairing ships for whoever paid in food or fuel. He had no rank, no family, and no orders. Only memories and a promise. He still carried the small metal emblem that the human commander Avery had given him before leaving. A star-shaped badge with the words USS Odyssey engraved on it. It was old and scratched now, but it reminded him that kindness once existed in the cold universe. Each night, when the world was silent, Drav looked at the emblem and whispered, "If I ever see them again, I will repay it." But the galaxy had changed. The Krath Dominion had risen as the new power. Their fleets ruled the stars with iron control. Any world that resisted was destroyed. The Varlans were broken and forgotten. No one came to help. Not the traders. Not the mercenaries. No one, because helping a defeated species brought no reward. Still, Drav kept fixing ships for those who needed him. It gave him purpose. He worked in a half-broken hangar near the wastelands, repairing old transports that barely flew. He charged little and sometimes nothing if the customers were poor. He remembered Commander Avery's words, "One kindness deserves another." One morning, while Drav repaired an old shuttle, a stranger arrived. She was tall, thin, and cloaked in dust. Her eyes carried the weariness of 1,000 battles. "Are you Drav?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Yes, what do you need repaired?" The stranger handed him a data chip. "I need this decoded. It's an emergency broadcast from orbit, but my ship's systems are fried." Drav inserted the chip into his reader. The message appeared on the screen, filled with static and broken sound. Then a clear voice came through, a voice speaking in a language Drav had not heard in years. "This is the Odyssey. To any survivors in Varlon sector, hold your position. We're coming," Drav froze. He recognized that name, that voice. Commander Avery. The humans had returned. He looked up at the stranger, his hands trembling slightly. "Where did you get this?" The woman looked confused. "The signal came from high orbit. I didn't think anyone still used that frequency." Drav's heart raced. "It's them. The humans. They're coming back." High above the planet, the human fleet emerged from hyperspace. The stars bent and stretched as massive ships appeared, sleek and silver, bearing the emblem of the United Earth Navy. The Odyssey was among them, larger and more powerful than before. Admiral Avery stood on the bridge, watching the cracked planet below. "Varlon Prime," she said softly. "We were here once." Her young officer, Lieutenant Chen, nodded. "Scanners show thousands of life signs. The Krath bombed the cities, but there are survivors." Avery's eyes hardened. "Prepare the relief teams. These people once helped us. It's time we return the favor." Chen looked at her. "Permission to ask, Admiral, why this system? There are dozens of crises across the border." Avery smiled faintly. "Because 10 years ago, when no one else would answer, one of their engineers sent a signal into the dark. And I heard it. The fleet began descending. Hundreds of dropships broke through the atmosphere, carrying food, water, and medical supplies. Some carried soldiers not for war but for protection. The humans were not invaders. They were rescuers. On the surface, chaos broke out as glowing human ships landed across the wastelands. Varlon survivors watched in disbelief as humans in blue uniforms stepped out, offering help, medicine, and clean water. For many, it was the first act of kindness they had seen in years. Drav ran to the landing zone, pushing through the crowd. A human officer turned toward him and blinked. "Drav," she asked. "Is that really you?" He recognized her instantly. The same eyes, the same calm smile. Commander Avery, now older, now an admiral, but still the same person who had once brought light into his darkness. Drav dropped to his knees. "You came back," he whispered. Avery knelt beside him and lifted him up gently. "I told you, we don't forget kindness." The next few days were a blur of work. Humans and Varlons repaired generators, built shelters, and cleared debris together. Human doctors treated wounded refugees without question. Engineers installed clean water systems. Everywhere they went, hope followed. Drav worked beside them tirelessly. Though older and weaker, his hands still knew how to fix things. He helped the human engineers connect damaged reactors and stabilize old machines. He didn't do it for payment, he did it because it felt right. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the broken city, Drav sat with Admiral Avery near the campfire. The air was warm and peaceful. "You shouldn't have come," Drav said softly. "Your people risked much for us. The Krath will not like this." Avery looked into the fire. "We know, but we don't choose our actions based on what others like. We choose them based on what's right." Drav smiled faintly. "You humans. You are strange. You give so easily." She looked at him. "Do you remember what I told you 10 years ago? If you see someone in trouble, help them." You remembered that. "We heard stories about a Varlon mechanic who helped refugees across the border worlds. That was you, wasn't it?" Drav's eyes widened. "You knew?" "Of course. The galaxy talks. One kindness ripples outward. You helped others, and now we're helping you. That's how it works." Drav looked down at the metal emblem still hanging around his neck. "Then the circle is complete." Avery smiled. "No, Drav, the circle never ends. It just keeps growing. But peace never lasts long in the galaxy." The Krath Dominion soon detected the human presence on Varlon Prime. Their scout ships appeared in orbit, demanding that the humans withdraw. The humans refused. Drav watched the human soldiers preparing defenses around the camp. He felt fear again, the same fear he had felt years ago on the outpost. But this time he was not alone. Humanity stood with them. Admiral Avery stood on the command deck, eyes fixed on the stars. "If they attack, we'll defend," she said calmly. But our mission stays the same, protect the civilians. The first Krath cruiser appeared dark and massive. It fired a warning shot into the upper atmosphere. The ground shook. The Varlons panicked. But the humans stood firm. Avery's voice echoed through the comms. All ships form the shield line. The human fleet moved as one, their vessels positioning between the Krath and the planet. Drav stood outside, watching streaks of light dance across the sky. It looked like stars fighting stars, he whispered to himself. They came back. They really came back. Hours later, the sky cleared. The Krath ships retreated, defeated by the humans' unexpected strength and unity. The battle was short but powerful, a message to the galaxy that kindness was not weakness, and that humanity protected those who once helped them. When dawn broke, the Varlan survivors gathered to thank their rescuers. Drav stood before the crowd, speaking with a voice filled with emotion. Once we believed the humans were reckless and strange, but today they showed us what true strength is, not in weapons but in loyalty. They remembered a kindness that everyone else forgot. Admiral Avery stepped forward smiling. We don't forget our friends, Drav, not ever. Drav bowed deeply. Then may the stars remember you as well. That night, as the humans rebuilt the camp and the fires burned softly, Drav looked up at the sky filled with ships and stars. He thought of how one small act, a single answered distress call, had grown into something vast and powerful. A friendship that could change the galaxy, and he knew deep in his heart that this was only the beginning. The sun rose slowly over the ruins of Varlon Prime. The world was quiet but not dead anymore. Smoke no longer filled the sky, only the trails of human ships flying above the horizon. The camps were growing larger every day. Where there had once been ashes and silence, there was now life, laughter, and the steady hum of machines. Drav stood near a repaired generator, watching human engineers work beside Varlan technicians. He could still hardly believe it. A decade ago, humans were strangers who appeared out of nowhere to save his dying outpost. Now they had returned with fleets of ships to save his entire people. Commander Rane, a young human officer, walked up to him with a grin. Hey, Drav. We got power restored to Sector 4. Those old systems of yours are tougher than they look. Drav smiled faintly. They were built to last even if our empire did not. Rane laughed. Well, you're still here. That counts for something. Drav looked around the camp. I'm only alive because of your kind. You could have left us to die. Many others did. Rane shrugged. That's not how we work. Admiral Avery says every act of kindness creates a bond. We honor that. Drav nodded slowly. She is right. High above the planet, the human fleet orbited in silent formation. The Krath Dominion's retreat had not ended the danger. Their main armada could return at any moment. The humans knew it, and they prepared for it. Inside the Odyssey's command center, Admiral Avery studied the tactical map. The Krath will regroup, she said. They won't accept defeat easily. Her Lieutenant Chen frowned. Their pride was hurt badly, but they're coming back with reinforcements, no doubt. Avery looked at him. Then we'll be ready. But our first goal remains the same. Protect the civilians. Every ship, every soldier, every resource we have is for that. Chen hesitated. Ma'am, with all respect, we're risking everything for people who aren't even part of our alliance. Avery smiled gently. Once someone said that to me when I decided to help a Varlon outpost. They told me it wasn't worth it. I didn't listen then, and I won't listen now. Chen lowered his head. Yes, ma'am. Back on the surface, Drav joined a group of young Varlons helping the humans repair a water purification plant. The human engineers were quick and creative, using spare parts in ways the Varlons had never considered. Drav admired them. Your people, they see solutions where others see failure. Rane grinned. That's how we survived back home. When you grow up fixing things with nothing but broken pieces, you learn to make do. Drav chuckled softly. Perhaps that is why you were so strong. One of the young Varlons, a girl named Lyra, asked, Why do humans help us? We have nothing to give. Rane looked at her kindly. Maybe not today, but one day you might help someone else. That's how the chain continues. Lyra smiled shyly. Then I will remember. Drav's heart warmed at those words. The humans had already begun to change them, not through orders or power, but through example. Later that night, Drav was invited aboard the Odyssey. The ship was larger and brighter than anything he had seen. Its walls glowed with soft light, and its crew moved with quiet purpose. Admiral Avery greeted him personally in the observation deck where the stars shone beyond the glass. "Welcome back, Drav," she said warmly. He bowed slightly. "It feels strange to stand here again. The last time I saw you, I was nothing but a frightened technician." She smiled. "And now you are a leader among your people." He shook his head. "I am only a survivor." "Survivors build the future," she said simply. They stood together in silence for a while, watching the stars. "Why did you return?" Drav finally asked. "You had no reason to." Avery looked thoughtful. "When I first met you, your people had nothing left. But you still trusted us. You still believed in hope." "I never forgot that. Humans never forget those who show them kindness, Drav. We remember. Always." He nodded slowly. "And now you repay it." "Yes," she said softly. "And when we do, we make sure it lasts." But the peace didn't last long. 3 days later, sensors picked up multiple warp signatures at the edge of the system. The Krath had returned, with a fleet 10 times larger than before. On the Odyssey's bridge, alarms blared. Officers moved quickly, their hands flying over controls. "Enemy ships inbound, 70, maybe more," reported Chen. Avery's expression remained calm. "Signal all ships. Defensive formation Delta. Protect the evacuation transports." The communication lines buzzed with chatter. Human ships moved into position like a wall of steel and light. The Varlon transports loaded with refugees began to lift off from the surface. Drav stood near the loading zone, watching in awe as human pilots guided ships through the smoke-filled sky. The roar of engines echoed like thunder. He had never seen such courage. A group of Varlon civilians panicked when the Krath cruisers appeared in the clouds. Drav climbed onto a crate and shouted, "Stay calm! The humans will hold the line. Trust them." He believed those words with all his heart. The battle that followed was fierce. Bright streaks of energy filled the sky as human ships fought against the much larger Krath fleet. The Odyssey took heavy hits but stayed firm, shielding the evacuation ships. On the surface, Drav watched the flashes of light above. It looked like stars colliding. The ground trembled and heat waves rolled through the air. But he did not run. He stood among his people, helping load the last of the children onto the final transport. "Move quickly," he shouted. "They are buying us time." Above, Admiral Avery's voice echoed through the command channels. "We stand for those who once stood alone. We fight for those who remembered us when the galaxy forgot. Hold your positions." The human fleet answered as one. Their combined firepower blazed across space, striking the Krath lines. Despite being outnumbered, the humans fought with unmatched will. Their smaller ships darted between massive cruisers, targeting weak points with precision. They fought not for conquest, but for gratitude. Even the Krath commanders were stunned by their determination. One of them, watching from his flagship, muttered in disbelief, "They fight like mad beings, for aliens who can give them nothing." Hours passed. The human ships took damage, but they did not break. Finally, when the Krath flagship began to retreat, cheers erupted across every channel. "The Krath are withdrawing," shouted Lieutenant Chen. Avery closed her eyes briefly, relief washing over her. "Then let them go. We've made our point. The battle was over. The refugees were safe." The Varlon world was scarred but alive. When Drav was brought aboard the Odyssey after the fight, he found Admiral Avery in the command deck, tired but smiling. She turned as he entered. "It's done," she said. "Your people are safe." Drav's eyes filled with tears he didn't try to hide. "You could have left us. You could have saved yourselves." Avery shook her head. "We don't leave friends behind. Not ever." He stepped closer and held out the old emblem she had given him long ago. "This belongs to you." She looked at it, then gently pushed his hand back. "Keep it. You earned it more than I did." Drav clutched the emblem tightly. "You have repaid a kindness 1,000 times over." Avery smiled softly. "And you started it, Drav. Never forget that." That night, as the human ships repaired and the Varlons began rebuilding, Drav recorded another log. 10 years ago, humans saved a forgotten outpost. Today, they saved an entire species. They fight not for power or territory, but for honor, for memory, for friendship. They say humans never overlook a kindness, and now I know it is true. Their payback is not destruction, but protection. Not revenge, but loyalty. It is the most powerful force I have ever seen. He closed the log, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, a new light was spreading. The light of trust carried by those strange, fearless beings called humans. The battle for Varlon Prime became one of the most talked about events in the galaxy. For decades, no one had ever seen humans fight like that. not for themselves but for others. The Krath Dominion had expected an easy victory. Instead, they were forced to retreat, defeated by a smaller, outnumbered force that refused to abandon their friends. News spread faster than light. In the trade routes, spaceports, and council halls, everyone spoke of it. Did you hear? The humans defended the Varlons to the last ship. They fought off the Krath Armada. They said it was repayment for a kindness from years ago. At first, many thought it was only a rumor. But then came the recordings, footage of human fleets holding the line, voices shouting through the comms. "We stand for those who once stood alone." Those words echoed across the stars. Even the most powerful species stopped to listen. On the planet Varlon Prime, peace was slowly returning. The cities were being rebuilt with human help. Machines hummed, lights glowed, and laughter filled the streets again. The humans and Varlons worked side by side, sharing tools, food, and stories. Drav stood near the construction site of a new command center. He had become a symbol of unity between the two species. Everywhere he went, Varlon children followed him, asking questions about the humans. One young boy tugged at his sleeve. "Is it true, Engineer Drav, that they came all this way just because you sent a message years ago?" Drav smiled kindly. "It was not only the message, young one. It was the kindness they showed first. We only answered it later." The boy frowned. "But they helped us even though we were strangers." "Why would they do that?" Drav looked toward the sky where human ships floated like silver birds. "Because that is what humans do. They remember kindness as if it were treasure." At night, Drav often sat by the campfire with Commander Rane and other human officers. They talked about their worlds, their families, and their dreams. One evening, Drav asked, "Does your people always keep such promises? To return kindness like this?" Rain poked the fire with a stick. "It's part of who we are. Some say humans are unpredictable. But when we call someone a friend, that bond lasts forever." Drav nodded slowly. "Your loyalty will be remembered by my people for all time." Rane smiled. "That's all the reward we need." They sat in silence, the stars reflecting in their eyes. Around them, the camp buzzed with quiet energy. Varlon children learning human words, soldiers teaching alien engineers how to weld, and laughter blending across species. Meanwhile, far away, the Galactic Council gathered in the capital world of Sonura. Representatives from more than 50 civilizations filled the Great Hall. The Council had not seen such activity in years. Holographic images of the battle played in the air above them. The bravery of humans was undeniable. Ambassador Koth of the Krath Dominion slammed his fist on the table. "They broke our borders. They interfered in a lawful conflict." But the chairwoman of the council, an ancient being with silver eyes, replied calmly, "They interfered to protect refugees. Your forces attacked civilians. The council will not punish them for that." Another voice spoke, a tall creature with blue skin. "We used to think humans were dangerous," it said. "Now I see they are dangerous only to those who forget compassion." Murmurs filled the room. Even among the council, admiration for humanity was growing. Back on the Odyssey, Admiral Avery watched the news feeds play across her command screen. Every channel in the galaxy was talking about her fleet. Some called them heroes, others called them fools, but all agreed on one thing: humanity had changed the game. Lieutenant Chen entered and saluted. "Ma'am, messages are flooding in. Dozens of worlds are offering trade and alliance talks." Avery smiled faintly. "Let them come." "But that was never our goal." Chen tilted his head. "Then what was it?" She looked out at the stars. "To show the galaxy what humans truly stand for. We're not conquerors or mercenaries. We're builders, friends. We remember those who stand by us, and we never forget those who once needed help." Chen nodded. "You've done that, Admiral. The whole galaxy is listening." Weeks passed, and the alliance between humans and Varlons grew strong. Joint research projects began. Human scientists helped rebuild communication arrays, while Varlon engineers shared their advanced navigation data. Together, they designed a new ship, part human steel, part Varlon crystal. It would be called Unity. Drav worked on the design himself, his hands steady despite his age. As he connected a panel, he whispered to himself, "From one act of kindness came this. A ship to carry friendship across the stars." When the Unity was completed, it was a masterpiece, sleek, strong, and graceful. It was the first vessel to fly under two flags, the Human Confederation and the Varlon Council. Its maiden voyage was to deliver relief supplies to a distant world struck by famine. Drav stood beside Admiral Avery as the ship lifted from the launch pad. The ground trembled beneath their feet. "You've built something beautiful," Avery said softly. Drav smiled. "We built it together." Not everyone in the galaxy was pleased, however. The Krath Dominion's defeat had wounded its pride deeply. In secret chambers, Krath leaders met to plan revenge. "They think kindness makes them strong," one of them hissed. "But it makes them weak. We will strike again when they least expect it." But the galaxy was no longer the same. The Human-Varlon alliance had inspired others. Small nations, once afraid of the Krath, began to unite. Traders formed protection fleets. Colonies started sharing resources instead of competing. One Krath general spoke quietly. "Even if we fight them, we will lose. Their strength is not in weapons, it's in loyalty." The council room fell silent. None of them could deny it. Months later, Admiral Avery and Drav were invited to speak before the Galactic Council. When they arrived, the Great Hall was filled with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. The crowd fell silent as Avery stood on the podium. Her voice was steady and calm. "We did not fight for glory. We fought because years ago someone believed in us. Kindness is not weakness, it is the foundation of peace. We humans remember kindness and we repay it not with war, but with protection." The hall erupted in applause. Even the Krath representatives, though silent, could not hide their respect. When it was Drav's turn to speak, he stepped forward slowly. His voice trembled, but his words were strong. "I was once a forgotten engineer on a dying station. The humans saved me when no one else cared. Years later, they saved my entire species. If you ask me what humans are, I will tell you this. They are the only beings I have ever known who repay light with greater light. Where they walk, hope follows." Many in the audience were moved to tears. The moment was recorded, replayed, and remembered for generations. When the session ended, Admiral Avery turned to Drav. "You've changed the galaxy, my friend." Drav chuckled softly. "No, Admiral, you did. I only sent a signal into the dark." Avery looked at him with warmth, and I answered it. "Seems fair." They both laughed, standing together as allies, and as symbols of what could happen when kindness was remembered instead of forgotten. That night, in the quiet observation deck of the Odyssey, Drav watched the stars beside the Admiral. Dozens of human and Varlon ships drifted peacefully in orbit, shining like jewels. "Do you think this peace will last?" Drav asked softly. Avery thought for a moment. "Peace never lasts forever, but kindness does. Even when wars return, the memory of compassion remains. It becomes the seed for the next generation to build upon." Drav nodded slowly. "Then humanity has given us something eternal," she smiled. "We only returned what you gave us." As the Odyssey turned toward the stars, its engines glowed softly, casting light over the rebuilt world below. Across the galaxy, stories of the humans spread, of their courage, loyalty, and unbreakable hearts. And everywhere those stories went, people began to hope again. They learned what Drav already knew. Humans never overlook a kindness, and when they repay it, they change the galaxy itself. Years had passed since the humans first returned to Varlon Prime. The memory of that day, the arrival of the fleet, the courage in the face of the Krath Armada, and the unwavering protection was still fresh in Drav's mind. But the galaxy had changed far beyond his homeworld. Human and Varlon ships now patrolled trade routes together, ensuring that no species faced famine, war, or piracy alone. Joint research stations studied stars and planets, building colonies that combined the best of both worlds. And everywhere Drav went, he saw the results of a single act of kindness, hope multiplied across light years. On Varlon Prime, a ceremony was taking place. The largest square in the capital city had been rebuilt with bright metals and crystal towers, a symbol of renewal and unity. Varlons and humans crowded together, watching as a monument was unveiled. Drav stood at the front, holding the small metal emblem the humans had given him years ago. His hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with emotion. The monument was simple yet powerful, a tall column of transparent crystal with a silver star at its peak. Etched into its base were the words, "No kindness is ever lost. It shapes the stars." Admiral Avery stepped forward beside him, now older but as determined as ever. Her voice carried across the plaza. "This monument is not just for one event or one species. It is a reminder that kindness is stronger than fear, stronger than war and stronger than time itself. It is a debt that can never be measured, only lived. Children, both Varlon and human, ran around the square playing together. Their laughter was a melody that carried above the speeches and formalities. Drav watched them, smiling. This was what he had fought for. Not revenge, not glory, but life. Hope. Friendship. A young Varlon girl tugged at his sleeve. "Engineer Drav, can we touch the monument?" He knelt and nodded. "Of course. But remember, it is not just stone and metal. It is a promise. It is the memory of what humans taught us." Lyra, as the girl was called, placed her small hand on the crystal surface. For a moment she stared at the silver star atop it. "I hope I can be as brave as them someday," she whispered. Drav patted her shoulder. "You already are. You just do not know it yet." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, word of the monument spread. Other species began to take note. Systems that once ignored each other now shared resources. Worlds that had remained isolated sent aid to those in need. Humans did not demand recognition, yet their actions inspired others to emulate them. At a Galactic Council meeting, a representative from the Andari cluster spoke aloud. "If one species can repay kindness with loyalty and protection, then perhaps all can. We must learn from their example." Even Krath representatives, though reluctant, could not deny it. Their commanders remembered the battle at Varlon Prime, not as a humiliation, but as a lesson. One of their generals muttered quietly, "Perhaps we underestimated humans. They do not fight for greed or conquest. They fight for bonds that cannot be broken." Back on Varlon Prime, Drav and Avery walked together across the plaza after the ceremony. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the city. "You know, Admiral," Drav said softly, 10 years ago I thought humanity was strange, reckless, perhaps foolish, but now I see it was courage and kindness that made you strong." Avery smiled. "We never forget what matters, Drav. A simple act of kindness can grow into something far larger than ourselves. We repay it not for glory, but because it is the right thing to do." Drav nodded. "And in repaying it, you change lives. Entire worlds." She looked at him thoughtfully. "And sometimes you change the galaxy." In the following weeks, humans and Varlons continued to rebuild together. Schools were established that taught both species histories and sciences. Trade routes opened with joint fleets providing protection. Scientists worked together on energy systems that could power entire cities, and engineers developed ships that could travel farther than any before. Drav became a teacher as well as a builder. He instructed young Varlons in the ways of engineering, teaching them not only how to build machines, but how to use knowledge for the good of others. He told them stories of the humans who had saved him, of their courage, their loyalty, and their compassion. "Remember this," he told his students, "strength alone does not build a future. Trust, kindness, and courage do. And humans never forget kindness. They repay it in ways you cannot imagine." One day, a new signal appeared on the communication arrays. A colony on a distant world had suffered from a catastrophic storm. Human and Varlon engineers immediately mobilized. Drav joined the rescue effort not as a survivor this time, but as a leader. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic. Homes were destroyed, crops ruined, and families stranded. But Drav looked at the horizon where human ships approached with supplies and relief teams. He remembered the day they first saved him, and now he understood fully. This was the repayment of kindness multiplied across the stars. Children waved as supplies were dropped. Adults cried with relief, and Drav knew that this was only the beginning. Every act of help, every repayment would ripple outward through the galaxy. Months later, in a quiet moment aboard a human Varlon joint research station, Drav recorded a final log. "When I was young, I watched the stars from a dying outpost. I thought nothing could save us. Then humans came, strangers who offered help when no one else would. That kindness changed my life. It saved my people, my homeworld, and countless others. Humanity never overlooks a kindness, and when they repay it, the ripple reaches farther than we can see, shaping the stars themselves. I am grateful beyond words. I am honored to witness it, and I will ensure the memory endures." He closed the log and looked at the stars through the observation deck. Somewhere out there, humans continued to travel, to help, to remember. And across the galaxy, new alliances formed, old wounds healed, and hope grew in places that had long been dark. Drav whispered softly, Thank you, humans, for everything. A gentle hum filled the station as a nearby human ship powered up, ready to depart for the next world in need. Drav knew the cycle would continue, and he smiled, knowing the galaxy would never forget. Years turned into decades. The story of Varlon Prime, the humans who came to save it, and the repayment of kindness became legend. Across countless worlds, younglings learned the tale as part of their history. Ships named after the Odyssey and the heroes of Varlon Prime carried hope to distant stars. Drav, now old, stood once more before the monument on Varlon Prime. Children played nearby. Humans and Varlons worked side by side to plant gardens and repair structures. The city thrived like never before. He touched the silver star atop the monument. From a single act of kindness, the galaxy changed, he murmured. And it will continue to change, long after I am gone. Admiral Avery, visiting the monument for the last time before returning to Earth, placed a hand on his shoulder. Drav, your story proves what we always knew. Kindness is never wasted. It grows and it shapes everything. Drav smiled. Yes, Admiral. You've proven it. Humanity's payback is not vengeance. It is protection, loyalty, and hope. The galaxy has learned the lesson, she nodded, and now it will pass to the next generation and the next and the next. The twin suns of Varlon Prime set together, casting a warm glow over the rebuilt city, the monument, and the fleet in orbit. Across the stars, the humans continued their mission, protecting, helping, remembering. And in every corner of the galaxy touched by their deeds, a single truth was clear. Humans never overlook a kindness, and their payback changes everything. The stars shone brighter that night, carrying the light of courage, loyalty, and the eternal memory of one simple act, a kindness answered across the void.